Hey guys, welcome to another installment of the Academy, and thanks for watching. Hey everybody, this is Neil with the Academy. Today we have Jim Bishop with us as a special guest in a special segment where he's going to talk about turn 2 from the scenario clash at Borisovka that I have been doing as a Let's Play tutorial type scenario, and he's going to go through some tank combat situation and some numbers and how you play the tanks and the AFVs to sort of maximize your opportunities and minimize your threats against you, particularly from the Russian point of view. Anything you want to add, Jim, before we jump in?
No, that's about right. Other than to say that, keep in mind that I'm primarily an ASL player,
Mhm.
not an SK player. And there will be times where I might slip into my ASLisms, and I'll rely on you to keep me straight,
I'll do my
um,
best.
which I'm sure you will, and
Yeah.
then we'll go from there.
And before we jump in, I just want to mention I am republishing with Jim's blessings. His articles on the website,
Mhm.
aslplayers.net. So look for those. And if you have any questions for Jim, just post in one of his old articles that I put up about every Friday, and he'll either comment them or maybe we'll do a video or he'll write an article about it down the road sometime. All right. So with that, let's jump into the action at Clash at Borisovka.
But to start today, the thing I'd like to say is my screen sharing here again. Can
Yes,
you
I see it.
so you see the so there's a couple of things that we do here that I talk about here in the top right hand corner. This is what For me, this is the basic principles of what I'm trying to accomplish with armored combat. When I think of AFV versus AFV combat, recognizing the opportunities, which is are there tanks that are isolated? Is there a to hit to kill advantage on my side? Is there an armor advantage on my side? What sort of opportunities do I have to eliminate or otherwise, destroy enemy tanks or neutralize them? Right.
Hmm.
And then when we're going to talk about tipping the odds, if you think of every to hit die roll and every to kill die roll is a percentage, and when you multiply those percentages together, that's your final odds number. And so if you add die roll modifiers to it in terms of like I'm in motion, so now your to hit was normally would be a 7 is now a 5, your final die roll number needed. I've just tipped the odds in my favor away from that. If I've presented you my frontal armor versus my side armor, and my frontal armor is thicker, I've just tipped the odds in my favor. And you'll find, just like in Vegas and cow carding and everything else, the more you tip the odds in your favor, the more you're likely to win. So that's
Especially
what we're talking.
especially the longer a game goes, right?
Yeah, the
The
longer a game goes,
odds.
the
Yep.
more you play ASL, the more shots you take, the
Yep.
more dice you roll, the more you can tip the odds in your favor, the more likely you are to win, whatever that is.
Yep.
That's not to say the dice can't still do you wrong, and that's not to say you still can't fail, because it is a dice game. But in the long run, you're trying to play the odds,
Mm.
and the way you tip odds is through skillful maneuver. So knowing what you're trying to accomplish, you're going to move your AFVs in a way that allows you to tip those odds. And the more movement points you have, or the more movement factors you have as a tank or an infantry, the more likely you are to be able to maneuver to places where those favorable shots to you are side shots, rear shots, presenting my front armor, knowing the dance of death, which we sometimes talk about. And what the dance of death is using the weapons on your vehicle to change covered arcs as incoming attacks happen, to always present your strongest target, your strongest armor factor towards the shooter. Eventually, you run out because you've only got so many times you can shoot machine
Yeah.
guns and tanks and whatnot, but always trying to play those games around. And then there's a concept that I call the first best shot. So there is an article in some of the old journals written by Bruce Bakken, which I think is, to me, is the best article in ASL I think I've ever written, second only to the Medro math articles. Um, and in Bruce's article, he talks about taking the first shot, and that's always possible as the defender, right?
Mhm.
Because you're waiting for the attacker to come. You can sit back and wait for the attacker to try to make something happen. Because as the attackers, we're losing. The minute we've accepted the attacking side, we're losing. It's on us to create this situation whereby we win. And so as an attacker, you're not necessarily always going to get the first shot. So what you're trying to get to is the first best shot. And the way you do this is by skillful maneuver, tipping the odds, forcing him to turn, shoot a limited LOS, etc., so that your to hit to kill chance is a better opportunity than his to hit to kill chance, or as even as you can get them,
Yeah.
especially if you got more, right? And so I'll call you to this little example right here in the middle, and it comes from our game today.
Okay.
And
I don't know. Can
so
you zoom in a little bit? Is it possible?
I don't know if I can zoom.
There
There
you
we
go.
go.
There you go. Yep.
There you go. So in this particular case, the the T-34s have a 13 to kill with their main armament, and if they're shooting at the frontal armor of any of the Mark IVs, they have a modified to kill number of 7. Right, so 7 or less is a kill per se. But keeping in mind that exactly a 7 is either a shock or an immobilization. If you want to know the odds of actually eliminating it, it's you have to roll less than or equal to 6, which is 41.7. So if I hit, we haven't talked about the hit yet, but if I hit, I have a roughly 42% chance of killing a Mark IV from the front. So that's the first thing. So then the second thing is if I hit on less than or equal to an 8, if you look over here, you can see the odds of rolling 2 dice less than the 8 is 72%, right? So I have a 72% chance to hit, 41% chance to kill. That's this number down here. 41 times 72 is it. Every time I shoot at a 13 to kill, 6 armor factor, where I have an 8 to hit number, I kill it 30% of the time, right? And so now the question becomes, how do I change away from those base odds? And you don't want to have to do that all the time. There's this simple chart down here that I wrote, and it will be posted eventually on your article, but it's
Yep.
the same thing, right? 8 to hit, cross-reference with a 6 to kill, 30.1%. That's
Yep.
all this does.
It's
Gives you the idea.
just a cumulative probability chart.
Correct. And so then the other thing to kind of notice is on this column, this is a 2 to kill. So if you kill me on a 2, even if you hit me on a 12, you've got a 2%, roughly 3% chance to kill me, not accounting for critical hits.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if you kill me on an 11, it doesn't the armor factor for me becomes one of I have to not be hit.
Yeah.
So those are the things to keep in mind. The more likely you are to kill me with your to kill die roll, you got a monster gun and I've got no armor, then my armor becomes my to hit die roll modifiers. I can't allow you to hit me. If I've got monstrous armor and you got a pea shooter, then you need critical hits, or I have to make sure you don't get to my sides or rear. That's what you really want to basically take from this chart. That's really all you want. Everything else doesn't really much matter. So that's where we're at, right?
Okay.
When we come to this. So I'm going to, this chart up here in the top corner just is a quick look at some of the things that are in play in this game. There's some Mark IV F2s. They have a basic 17 to kill. There's the Panzer IV or the Panzer VI, which is a 20 to kill, has an APCR of 5, then it gets a 23 to kill. That 23 to kill against our 11 armor is not positive, right? From a Russian perspective,
Depends on the perspective.
that's not positive, right? So that means if he gets APCR, what's our armor become? I've already told you a moment ago. Our armor is to hit die roll modifiers because we cannot allow him to hit us. So we have to skillfully maneuver in such a way that we change his to hit die rolls down below that coin flip. If we can get it down below a 5 to hit, that's the only way we're going to survive if he gets that APCR. It's got to be less than a 5, right? Less than a 4. My target number, I will risk a 4. I'm not a big fan of risking a 5. And if you look at this math here, a 4 is a 16% chance. A 5 is almost 30% chance. So a 4 is half the chance of a 5. So in my mind, that's my thought process where I'm going to.
Mm-hmm.
So then the other thing we look at is our 13 to kill numbers against the 11 hull 14 turret of the front of those Tiger. So our 13 can't even go through unless we roll a 2 to kill, and that's an immobilization against the frontal armor. If we get APCR, we get a little bit more lucky. We do have APCR number of a 17, but again, going through the front is just not very good. But this is one of my favorite matchups is these Mark IVs against these T-34s. They're the Mark IVs end up with a 6 to kill against the T-34s. The T-34s end up with a 7 to kill against the Mark IVs. But the Mark IVs get to fire CE, so they end up with 1 pip better on the to hit number, and the T-34s end up with 1 pip less on the to hit number. And so they're almost a coin flip. When you put two of them in front of each other and just let them bail away, they become almost a coin flip.
Yeah,
So
we should remind people that these T-34s have restricted slow turrets, so
correct.
they cannot fire crew exposed. They always have to be buttoned up when they fire.
Correct. And so those things right there become what we're thinking about, right? And so then now I'm going to come over to the board so we can come to the board. You don't need to share my desktop anymore.
No, I'll just jump to vassal.
Okay. And so then when we look in on vassal here, and tell me if you can see the pinging.
Yep.
Okay, so I've turned off the counters on this just to look at the board. So as the Russians coming in, we know that our long range fire isn't going to be good. We're using isn't going to be as good as the Germans. Let me rephrase that. We're using red to hit numbers, which fall off much quicker compared to the Germans, and we have such a lower AP to kill number compared to them that also starts to fall off. That beyond ranges of 13 or 14, our to kill numbers just precipitously drop off. So as the Russians, we want to close. That's our goal. We want to close. We want to get to less than or equal to 6 if we can help it. Then we're both using the same black to hit numbers essentially, effectively. And there's no precipitous drop off. And then the closer we get to people, the fewer hexes you spend inside their covered arc, if that makes sense. If I'm 1 hex away, there's only 2 hexes he's looking at. I can go through 2 hexes and get out of his covered arc. If I'm 10 hexes away, so like when we get to it, there's one of the Tigers parked here, I think, or here. Mm-hmm. If I come from S2 to T2, that's only 2 hexes. If I go N7 or M7, N7, Q8, P8, Q9, like this is a lot of hexes in this guy's LOS, right? Mm-hmm. And so the closer we range, the more ability we have to change the odds to tip those turning factors. Conversely, as the Germans, what I want to do is my T30, my Tigers, the Panzer VIs, they're for all intents and purposes, they're invulnerable to just about anything but a side or a rear shot, and even a side shot without APCR is a basic to kill number 13 against an 8 armor. Mm-hmm. So even if they get a side shot, they only kill you on 4 or less, and they immobilize you or stun you on a 5 or less, right?
Yep.
And so even that isn't a guaranteed from the T-34's perspective. So that tells me my Tigers, the Kings, I want to put them in the middle of the board someplace, and I want to control everything. The Mark IVs, though, they're a bit of a coin flip. When you look at it, my chances of killing him or eliminating his units are going to be about the same as him eliminating mine. And so that means I don't want to get into a position where I allow him to gang multiple tanks up on my tank. Because by doing that, it's going to put my tanks in a position where I'm probably not going to win just based on odds.
So from the German perspective, at least from the Mark IVs, Panzer IVs, the Germans want to fight at distance. The Russians really don't. They want to close, right?
Correct.
That's basically your thesis, right?
Yes, and particularly for the Germans, they want to make sure they take the first shot with their Mark IVs. They don't want to. What you don't want to do, if you can help it, is drive in, park, give the Russians a shot, take a shot in advancing fire that's likely not going to do much because of all the modifiers, and then allow the Russians in prep fire to shoot back when they have an acquisition on you, because that's going to cost you. What you'd rather do is find yourself a place where you're not as exposed to those, but still supporting the Tigers. Because remember, the Tigers are king. Mm-hmm. The big thing you can't allow is the Russians to get side and rear shots. And so you want to place your Mark IVs in such a way that they can protect the Tigers, but not protect them where you only have one movement point seeing the enemy. You want to be able to see them on 3 or 4 shots. And then you want to be in a position where if you're shooting at the the T-34 is trying to get sides and rear shots on your tanks, you're getting rear and side shots on theirs.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And so if I'm playing this as the Russians, I'm coming as far as I can on the first turn, which I think they've only got 8 movement points, and I'm going to try to hide down inside of here and behind this wood mass or up here on top of this hill and see where the Germans come. And I'm going to continue to try to drive down here, because if we read the victory conditions, it says the Germans win, or excuse me, the Russians win if they eliminate more enemy AFVs than the Germans do. And the Russians start with 10 tanks, the Germans start with 6. So what that realistically means is the Russians can afford to lose 7 tanks if they kill every other German tank. If they do that, that means they'll have 9 tanks left because 3 will drive off. And that'll be a 9-8 victory. So as the German, my goal is to kill 8 Russian tanks. That's my goal. Mm. If I kill 8 tanks, I can win no matter what.
Yeah, regardless.
So that's the tipping point. And it's also worth noting that a tank with at least, as I read the victory conditions here, a tank with a malfunctioned main armament still counts as a tank exiting the vehicle, exiting the board. So I can intensify all I want as long as I don't 12 it.
Yeah, so you're saying a recalled,
not recalled.
Oh,
if
sorry.
I shoot the main armament and malfunction it, I'm not going to repair it.
Just malfunction, right?
I get I'm not going to repair it. I'm just going to drive it right off because it still counts as a point. And it's going to force him to have to shoot me, even though it can't hurt him. He's going to have to think about, do I shoot this tank as it drives away? And as I'm moving it across and he shoots and exhausts Roth, that gives me an opportunity for moving as I think about other things. So a malfunction tank has still got a use for me.
Right.
And those are the things that I'm thinking.
So
if you
had a T-34 with a malfunction main armor, would you choose purposely not to repair it?
Yes, I would purposely choose not to repair it.
Okay.
I would purposely choose not to repair it.
Yeah.
If it's recalled, and now again, this is where we get into a question between starter kit and ASL. Mm-hmm. I imagine the answer is the same, but I don't know for sure. In ASL, a recalled vehicle doesn't count for victory points for either side.
I think it's the same.
And because my entry area is on the left or north, I think in this case,
left.
I would have to exit via that edge, not via the south edge. And because I didn't exit via the south edge, I'm not fulfilling the victory conditions in the card. So as the Russians coming into this game, here are a couple of my points. I want to close. I want to take sides and rears on the Tigers if I can. I'm not afraid to intensive fire. And in an ideal situation, if I get up by 1 tank, if I kill 1 German tank, the Germans now are losing. And so now I want to try to find a way to put myself in a position where when these Tigers come out to start hunting my tanks, I'm going to be able to get sides and rear shots on them. And I'm close enough that I can use my excessive maneuverability to catch them. Because that's one of the biggest strengths the Russians have in this game is they have 16 and 17 movement points in all their tanks. Now they have red start numbers, so they got to kind of think their way through it. But with all that maneuverability compared to those Tigers, they should be able to swarm those Tigers from anywhere on the board. And that's going to be hard on the Tigers to defend everything. So if you want to put together a plan as the Russians, your first plan is you want to try to stay as mobile as you can, close the distance as close as you can, and if you've got a chance to pick off T-34 or the Mark IVs, then try to pick off the Mark IVs, because those Tigers, when they're isolated by themselves, are dead meat. And if you get 1 tank up, just 1 solitary tank up, you can wait for them and try to create a crossfire so that when they come to deal with one, that they're getting shot by the other, and then you control the game. And that's the thing to think about.
Okay. But in the end, it always comes down to dice rolls.
Correct. And that's ultimately the problem.
Yeah.
And so as I put the tanks back on the board here, and this is the position at the end of turn 2. And my initial thought was
beginning of turn 2.
Yeah, I'm sorry, beginning of turn 2.
Yeah.
End of 1, beginning of 2. So the Russians have entered and they're here, and these guys are here. So let's talk a little bit about the Russian positions. So like these guys down here, I can understand why you stopped them, but I don't know that I would have stopped them. It works out. It's not bad in your favor. Stopping them here, uh, in my opinion, should have compelled the Germans to play this a little bit differently because you have first shots on these guys. This acquisition should have actually managed to track it all the way
Yeah,
down onto this
probably.
vehicle.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move that down. But remember what I said earlier, your goal as a Germans is to take the first shot. And the fact that you've got all these acquisitions on top of your counters mean you didn't get the first shot. And so now the problem is going to be just mathematically, this thing right here, when you figure out, I remember correctly looking at the ASL chart, this guy's to hit roll is going to be a 7. It's a counting for his L gun and his base to hit on red to hit numbers. I think that's a 7, and then the acquisition will cancel out the button up.
Let me
Then
grab my
yeah,
SK chart,
yeah.
which
I
is what
think
I
the SK
use.
chart. Yeah, I think the SK chart is there. I can do it and get the right number using this chart right here in Vassal. Right, and the Vassal, the ordnance to hit number at a range of 19 on the red numbers is
Yeah,
a 6.
range of
L,
7.
L, yeah, L
Or
gun L gun makes it a 7.
yep,
And then button up and acquisition will cancel out, right? So the button up is, I think, case Q. No, can't remember what case the buttoned up is.
on full
It's a,
ASL.
it's a, yeah, it's a fire-based DRM. So, but that he gets the +1 for buttoned up over here, and he gets the -1 for the acquisition, right? So if we remember our little table, this is going to hit on a 7 and shock stun on a 6, kill on a 5. So if we just do a real quick math on the thing, we do. If
So
anybody's got the table,
so
they
for
can
the
look real fast.
SK players, buttoned up is case 13.
Yeah. So if you do the math, a 7 to hit across this 5 to kill, not counting shock or stun, is 16%. If you throw in shock or stun, it's a 25%. So this shot is a 1 in 4, right? The shot from here to here is a 1 in 4 to stun it. This shot right here is a 1 in 4 to stun it. This shot right here is a 1 in 4 to stun it. That shot right there is a 1 in 4 to stun it.
Are
And that
you
shot right there.
are you clicking in Vassal? Because I'm not seeing anything.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I'm clicking in Vassal. I can see the LOS.
Oh, okay. The
So
connected
it's the
acquisition. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So there's a connected acquisition between here and here.
yeah.
That's a 1 in 4 to stun. There's a connected acquisition between here and here. That's a 1 in 4. All 3 of these tanks have a connected acquisition on this tank. It's a 1 in 4, right?
Yep.
And so that's 5 shots at a 1 in 4, which means that one of these tanks almost certainly should be dead at the end of end of this prep fire phase, on average. And usually there's about a 20% chance that the second one would be dead or eliminated.
Now
And you throw this.
when I played it, I
You throw,
might have forgotten to fire one of those 5. I
yeah.
think.
Yeah, and so then there's the same thing up here, which is this one right here is not quite as good. This is only going to be a shot on a 6, a hit on a 6, and a kill on eliminate on a 6 because he doesn't have acquisition, right? And so that one 6 and 6 works out to about 17%. So this is about a 1 in 5, right? So there's a 1 in 5 shot, and then there's basically 3 shots at 1 in 4. So realistically, you rate to lose 2 of these tanks this turn, just in the prep fire phase, the way you have it. And so to me, a better place for this tank right here would have been back here somewhere. Maybe one of these guys can still see him. Maybe one of these guys can still see him, but it's a lot fewer acts, and he still covers the sides and rears of this guy. These guys' positions are pretty good. I might push them down one more around like this, where they're a little bit out of the way, right? And they can still control the same space, but they're not as vulnerable to all these vehicles. This guy right here is completely isolated. When we talk about searching for opportunities, he's completely isolated to a group of vehicles sitting along behind here because there's nothing supporting him.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere to run for him. Right. And so to me, a better place for him is even back here or in here someplace. Now he's got to worry about these guys up on top of the hill, so maybe here is a better spot, which gives him the same idea. You don't want to, as the Germans, you don't want to take the first shot or get shot first,
Now
right? Because if you do, I'm going to put everything back where it belongs.
this guy up here, yeah, I mean, I realized he was isolated, and I tried to take advantage of that. I think on the Russian turn 3, I moved some of these guys, kind of lined them up like this, and took shots at him, and I still couldn't take him out. Maybe I didn't look
Yeah.
at my averages. I might have rolled terribly as the Russians. I'm not sure.
I wasn't paying attention to the rules. I mean, again, we can't control the dice rolls. All we can do is give ourselves the best chance,
Yeah.
right? And so that's what I'm thinking about now is how do I get the best chance? Now, conversely, if we look back here at the German shot, right? So this tank right here has got an acquisition. I think it's this one. Yeah, he's got an acquisition in this one. So his shot is also going to be, I think, actually not a 7. It'll be an 8 because he's using the black to hit numbers and he's CE,
Hmm.
whereas I'm using the red and I'm buttoned up. So he's got an 8 to hit, and then it's going to be at that range, his 17 will diminish to a 16, right? And so if he hits the hull, it's a 16 off an 11. But if he hits the turret, it's a 16 off of an 8 because of the circled 11. So so this guy on these two tanks right here, he actually is going to win pretty handily routinely. I'm not going to say he's going to win it all the time, obviously, because you can slam it into the hull a lot of times. But if you hit it on the turret, it's going to be bad
Hmm.
because it's going to die. It's going to be eliminated like 70% of the time, 60% of the time. Yeah, 72% of the time. If you hit it in the turret, it's going to be shocked.
On the M41.
Yes,
Yeah.
on the M41s with the
Yeah.
circle eights.
With the inferior
So,
turret.
yep. So as this plays right here in this turn, for me personally, I start thinking about okay, so this is the position I've been given. How do I deal with this? So because I've got all these acquisitions, I think the right thing to do is what you did, which is shoot. Right.
Right.
I don't think I'd want to. I don't think I'd want to be in this position as the Germans. Um, and so the thing is who do you shoot first? And to me, I shoot these two guys first because I'd rather move these guys if I can help it because they've got more maneuverability,
Hmm.
and these guys have got better survivability. But if these guys don't get a result on these guys of some kind, then I'm probably just going to have to shoot those guys.
Hmm.
So that's the way I think about that. Same with this guy. This guy shoots first before anything else moves. And I'm not going to take these tigers on this turn. If it
No.
were full ASL, I'd take these tigers on this turn. Not full SL, I'm not going to. Part of the reason why I take these guys on is because this guy's not in great position to support them.
Hmm.
And so all this movement could come in this way, and all this movement could come in this way, and that gives me roughly 10 tanks on 2 pretty quickly. This guy can't support here. This guy can support here somewhat, but he can't support on this side of the woods here because of the woods. And even with him supporting, he's going to face a turret covered arc change, plus some hindrances, plus the hindrance of this tank, and then LOS blockages here. But and then this guy's position is even worse, relatively speaking, than this guy because he's got another hindrance in the way.
Hmm.
So if these guys were in motion and this were full up ASL, I would be attacking these guys. Part of that's because the opportunities that bypass creates for me.
Right.
Because this isn't full ASL, this is actually a lot more dominant position this turn until I close about half the distance.
Yep. Yep.
So in this particular space, this is what I would do here. I would prep fire this, and this first and see the results. And then I would concentrate on this tank is the one that I want to kill first, more than anything, because he allows me to go. It gives me some more maneuverability. This guy right here is also pretty bad for me because of his covered arc going out this way.
Hmm.
He's got such great coverage into this space. But I would really like to empty up in this space right here because there's some opportunities inside of here that we'll show in a second.
Okay.
So that's my thinking on what I would do a little bit differently and how I feel right now. We can roll dice and see how it turns out, or we can do what you want to do.
Yeah, we
Um,
can. I mean, that's pretty much what I did on turn 2. I prep fired all those guys, and well, I fired at
yeah,
the acquisition guys, right? Obviously,
yeah,
whatever was acquisitioned on, this guy and this guy,
yeah. So
I
so we'll just
fired.
do this guy. So we'll just do this guy first, right? His acquisition's up here.
Yeah.
So his first shot when you work the math out, I think the range is 19.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, the range is 18. So the basic to hit number, I
I
believe,
think
is 7 on your charts.
I think the range is 19. I think you're one
Uh,
hack short.
E16 to Y4. I show 18 unless I miss. Oh yeah, one hex
Yeah,
short. You're right.
you're one
19.
short.
Yeah, yeah, 19. But it didn't change the fact. It didn't change the anything. The basic to hit was 7 on your charts, right?
Russian 76L. As I wade through all of these numbers, well, going from 18 to 19, it goes from an 8 to a 7. So
Correct.
yeah,
So
on the
the
on the
basic to
SK
hit
chart.
is, yeah. So the base to hit on this is a 7,
Yep.
and then he's buttoned up,
Yep.
and then he's got an acquisition, so he hits on a 7,
Yep.
basically, right? And so you would just roll to hit, right? So closing this down, roll to hit. So now as that hit, it hits in the turret, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's got rate of fire. So his to kill number at that range, looking at the map at the chart again, the vehicle to kill on the 76L is a 13. And then at range 19 to 24, I lose 1. So it becomes a 12. Does that exist in the starter kit?
Yeah. So Russian 76L, regular AP, 19 to 24 range is a 12.
Correct. So,
Yep.
like I said, we'll get to the same answers. We just get to them
Yep.
differently.
There's just baked
So I
in
hit,
baked in numbers in the SK
yeah,
charts.
yep. So I hit him in the hit him in the turret. So it's a 12 against a 6. So it's a 6 to shock, right? So then he rolls to kill. That's 1 greater. That's a possible
Possible
shock.
shock.
So you can go ahead and roll your possible shock.
Okay. I made it.
Okay, so you pass it. So now I have a double ack from that tank. Which one is it? Is it this one? Nope. Is it this one? Nope. It's this one. So we're going to flip it. I have a double act because I had acquired it. So now my basic to hit is going to be 1 bigger. It was a 7 a moment ago. Now it's going to be an 8. So again, I rolled to hit. That hits in the hull. It's the same 6 to 12.
Yep.
Rolling to kill.
Nope.
No possible shock. I'm going to fire my machine guns. At that range, it's going to be a 2 up 2. Just to see if I can stun you.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. And then I'm going to intensive fire because there's no sense not in doing it, right?
Okay.
So my basic do I have another guy that can shoot him? Actually, before we intensive fire him, we're going to shoot him with this guy as well.
Right.
There's no sense. There's no sense in breaking the gun yet.
If you don't have to, no.
So, correct. So same thing. It's a basic 7 to hit. It's all the same modifiers from before. So that misses by 1. Machine guns are 2 up 2. That's no effect. And the reason we shoot the machine guns is because you're CE, and if we can stun him, or we can force them to button up with a pin result,
Mm-hmm.
it changes your to hit numbers. And because there's no snipers and there's no real reason not to take a chance on it, we'll just take it. If I'd rolled a 2, it would have been great, right? So intensive fire with this guy, he does have a double ack, right? So with an intensive fire, that adds 2 to my die roll modifier. That's a +2 die roll modifier. I'm buttoned up. That's a +3 die roll modifier. And then I've got a double ack, which is a -2. So it's a net +1. And we know it's a base of 7. So that becomes a final to hit number of 6.
Yep.
So we just roll to hit. Nope. Then the next guy, intensive fire, rolls to hit. He hits in the hull. And again, it's a 6 off of 3. Or I'm sorry, it's a 12 off of 6.
Mm-hmm.
1 greater is a possible
Another
shock.
shock, possibly. Let's see. Oh.
And now you get this happy little counter right here.
Let me button up.
Fire. Where's that? It's a vehicle. That's bad things, right? Yeah, there it is.
Shock.
Bad things.
Is it under bad things?
Nope, it's right here. So that vehicle's shocked. And so that's what happened right there, right? I had 1 rate fire shot, 2 normal shots, and 2 intensive fire shots. I had 5 shots against that vehicle.
Yep.
And roughly a 20% chance to pull it down, which is what mathematically, it just happened to work out mathematically, but mathematically I should have, in 5 shots, that's the expected outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem that I think these Germans have here, right? So then I don't really have much choice, so I might as well start with these guys. This guy's got 1 last spot. I may hold on him first because I may close the gap and kill him. But then this guy right here, he'll shoot his acquired target here. So the math is all the same. The modifiers, the range is 20 versus 19, but that doesn't change anything. It's the same basic 7 to hit. I'm buttoned up and I have an acquisition. So it works out as a 7, right?
Yep.
So you roll to hit. That'll hit in the hull. It's the same 13 modified to a 12 to kill against a 6 armor. So it's a 6 to immobilize.
Now, when you say modified to kill for the SK players, what's happening is in full ASL, there's the base to kill, and then it gets modified by your barrel length, your muzzle velocity. That number is already in the SK chart. That's why on the SK chart, the base to kill says 12. On the full
Yeah.
ASL
So
says 13, and it gets reduced by 1 because of the muzzle velocity modifier.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I apologize for the terminology spaces, but again, we get to the same answer.
Yep. I just want to make sure you're kind of working in full ASL land, which I understand, but a lot of people that are watching this might be SK players.
Yeah. So the basic, so the 8 die roll doesn't kill it, but again, we might as well shoot the machine guns, right? So we shoot the machine guns, no effect. Then the next guy here shoots, same thing, nothing's changed. It's going to be the same 7 to hit, except I have 1 double ack on him now, and I want to flip that over because chances are I'm going to intensify. I'm going to flip the acquisition over, but I'm not going to count it. But it's still the basic same final original die roll of 7 hits. So you miss by 1. Machine guns from him, 2 of 2. No effect. Imagine if I roll snake eyes on that and stun him, right? And so that's what we're trying at. Then intensive fire, it's going to be the same as it was over here again. It's going to end up being a 6, +2 for intensive fire, +3 because I'm buttoned up, -2 for the double acquisition. So I hits on a 6. So you roll to hit, hits in the 6 in the hull, roll to kill. 1 greater, another possible shock.
Lots of possible shocks here. He's okay.
So you pass it, and then the last guy will shoot his intensive fire.
Oh, yeah.
That's too bad, right? So we'll talk it through, but that's a critical hit.
Yeah.
So remember my to kill number is a 13, modified, I believe, to a 12 for range.
Yep.
Right, and then doubled to a 24.
Yep.
Because it's a critical hit, taken off of a 6. So 24 minus 6 is an 18. So I have to roll less than or equal to 18 on 2 dice to kill him.
Don't roll box scars.
With 12 always being a dud. And so that one would be burning. And that's really good for me because with him burning, it creates 2 more smoke in front of this guy trying to fire me.
No burning wrecks in SK.
Oh,
yeah, I know.
Boo.
There's no cruise. There's no burning wreck. It's just a wreck.
That's too bad. It's just a wreck. That's
Yeah.
too bad.
Just a wreck.
So now remember what I said before. Now I'm winning. I've killed one of your tanks. I'm winning.
I think the big difference between my playthrough is, and you made a good point earlier about intensifiering. I didn't intensify any of these guys early, but you make a point that even if they break their main armament, malfunction their main armament, they're still an asset, and you can try to drive them off or use them as distractions for the Germans taking other shots while you do other things with your other AFVs, which I didn't really consider, and that's a good point.
You can drive right at the Germans and shoot machine guns 6 up 2 adjacent.
Yep. So yeah,
right?
You make a good point. I think the Russians just need to leverage intensive fire whenever they have the chance. And you got lucky. You did 4 intensive fires, and you didn't even come close to breaking anything.
Well, so if you think about an intensive fire, breaks on a 10 or higher, right? With the +2 die roll modifier, rolls a 10. There's 6 total ways to roll greater than or equal to 10. So you have a 1 in 12 chance every time you shoot intensive fire and breaking your gun. Now, add to that, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 1 in 12. Actually, it's 1 in. Is it 1 in 12 or 1 in 6? Might be 1 in 6. There's 1 way to roll a 12. There's 2 ways to roll 11. There's 3 ways to roll a 6. It's a 1 in 6 to break your gun. So you have a 16% chance to break your gun. But to hit this guy, I never needed less than a 6, right? And that's a 42% roughly. So I had almost 3 times as more. I was almost 3 times as likely to hit that tank as I was to break my gun. And then when I hit it, I have roughly a 25% chance of killing it.
Right.
Right. And so in the long run, intensive fire here works out. I might
Oh
not
yeah.
have done it if I were firing intensive fire with these guys.
Right. Unless you
Right.
got a side
And
or
so,
rear shot.
yeah. Now this guy's got an acquisition on me up here, right? And so
Mhm.
I almost have to shoot this guy because it's not, if I don't,
Yeah.
or I have to maneuver on him with these guys to try to distract him from shooting me
Hmm.
because he could easily close the gap on me right down here. And so this guy probably needs to shoot. And because this guy is shocked and this guy doesn't need to go anywhere, he would probably shoot here as well. Right? And so he starts with the same 7 to hit. He hits in the hole, same basically 6 to kill. So that guy is immobilized and shocked now.
Not going
Right?
anywhere.
And so not only is he not going anywhere, he's not very well placed if I go up this way to cause anything, and I can deal with him later. And the way shock works is basically this tank comes back 2/3 of the time. If you do the math, works out to 2/3 of the
Right.
time.
So
Unless it's me, I never get him back.
now that guy is shocked and immobilized. The T-34 you just fired, would you consider intensive firing, or are you good enough with that?
I'm good enough with it right now because he's shocked and immobilized.
Yeah.
I'll be really unhappy
Recovers and
if he recovers. Right, he's got a 1 in 3 chance. He's got a 1 in 3 chance of recovering, and if he recovers, it's like nothing happened to him.
right.
The only thing that's happened that's dilatory is the fact that he's buttoned up now. So he's lost 1 pip on his to hit Shivo. But if he got a little bit of a rough run, he could easily kill 2 of my tanks, especially this guy here,
Hmm.
because of his inferior turret,
Hmm.
right? And so if he kills this guy, suddenly I'm not winning anymore. Right now I'm winning.
Oh yeah. Yep. That
Suddenly I'm
intensive
not
fire
winning.
made a huge difference in
Yeah.
this
And so
beginning
it's
of
the
turn
same.
two. Just that alone.
Yeah. So this guy right here would take his shot up there, right? And he just rolls to hit. That'll miss by 1 because I don't have the acquisition. Shoots machine guns for a 2 up
What's the range? Is that?
It's going to be 20, I think. I can't remember
No,
exactly what the number is.
it's under 20 up to
Actually,
there.
it's 14.
13 or 4. I saw 13.
It was 14. I measured to the wrong
Oh,
hex.
okay.
So it's 14.
Let's see.
So his base to hit at 14. Actually, it probably no, it was still to miss.
Let's see what the SK chart
7.
says.
Oh no, it hits. It was hit.
It's a base
It
of
should be an
8.
8. Yep,
Yeah.
an 8, and I was buttoned up.
And would you roll? You rolled a 7. Yeah.
Yep. And so then I followed it up with a 1-2, which killed it. Right? Or if you want to count as an IFT die roll, it's a 1 up 2, which is a 5, which is a normal morale check on the guy with the machine guns,
Mhm.
which is kind of what I was getting at earlier. Because he's CE, that just pushed a morale check on him, right?
Right.
And if he fails a morale check, that's a stun. He's out. He's basically immobilized for this turn, and each of these tanks are free to just drive right down here
Hmm.
and take all the shots that they want on this guy while he's unable to defend himself. And now I'm up 2 tanks, 1 maybe 3. So right now I'm up 2.3 tanks. 2.3 because this
So
guy's got a 1 in 3 chance of coming back.
back to this guy here.
Yeah.
If you would have treated that as infantry fire table, if you would have gotten that and they were stunned, would you have intensive fired then, or were you called it good and just left them?
I might have intensive fired him there. Um, I don't know. I might have just left him as good because the thing is that now because he's stunned, my ability to maneuver is so high.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this tank is so well placed here because he's got this great giant field of fire. I can't maneuver these tanks onto him, and I don't want to get it now. Now because I'm winning, I'm going to start thinking about how do I hide these tanks in such a way that when these guys come out to play, and they now have to come out to play, how am I going to be able to maneuver on them that I can get sides and rear shots?
So
So now think about it from your perspective. Okay, so the turn is over. You take your shot back here. So I didn't move. I fired everything. maybe I move these tanks down to here like this, right?
Mhm.
This guy comes into here because again, I'm just trying to find a place to hide.
Now, at this point,
No,
based on these results, would you play the cat and mouse game, or would you still try to get guys
yes,
off the board?
100% play the cat and mouse game right now.
Okay.
And if he represents an opportunity for me to get off the board, then I would get off the board,
Okay.
right? And so all of these guys, if I didn't destroy this tank, all of these guys would put an acquisition on here just to keep in your mind, right? You had the acquisition on here, but you lost it when you stunned, right? So now think about how you're going to handle your turn, right? How do you deal with this now? You've got this tank dead.
Well, geez. Well, technically, didn't you killed
This
this?
tank is
Technically,
dead.
you killed
Yeah,
that guy, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the
So
Germans are
so
now in a world of hurt
yeah, so yeah, and that's the thing,
already.
right? So you've got this tank dead, this tank dead. You can roll to recover that, right? On a 1 or 2, you get him back.
Hmm.
So I
Oh,
rolled a 1, you roll a 5, so that's fine. We'll just give them back to you, right? We'll give them back to you. So now, how do you deal with it, right? This guy right here, he could have shot. I guess he gets a shot. I'm on the G row. He can shoot G3, G4. He can shoot G4. He can only shoot
yeah.
G4. So he
This
takes one shot at
this
G4. He
guy.
rolls to hit, and he misses. So he's got his ack, right? Because he rolled a 10.
Hmm.
Right? So that's it. So now it's your turn. How do you deal with it at this point? What do? You got all
Let's
these tanks
see.
here,
These three
right?
T-34s have acquisition. Well, geez, well, he's immobilized. Prep fire this guy. He
Yeah,
can't. He has no other choice, right?
yeah, yeah. So he preps. He
And he
takes
would
probably
fire at
this
this guy. Yep,
first, right?
yep, yep.
So, so he lost his thing. So he's looking, I think, at a 6. I think maybe a
6 or
7.
7.
Probably a 7
See,
because he's going to be using black to hit numbers.
eight
And,
eight
well,
base with +1. Yeah,
oh yeah, because of the line. So, but he's buttoned up.
yeah. So need a
So
7.
he 7 to hit.
Mm-hmm.
So he rolls to hit.
To hit.
Hits in the turret,
Ooh,
which is good for him.
nice.
That's a 17 to 8, or sorry, 16 to 8. It's a base 17. Range will make it a 16 on your charts, even. And then it's a
Armor.
16 to 8. So it's an
Yeah.
8 to shock him.
Armor goes on to 8 for the SK players for inferior turret.
Yep.
So uh,
And so that's an automatic shock.
shocked.
Yep.
Did not get.
And
Did
no
not
rate
get
of fire.
raped.
So but do you want to shoot your intensifier? You might as well because you're not moving anywhere. Although I'm shocked and it's the only guy that can see you. Maybe you don't shoot him. Maybe you do shoot him. I don't know. I
Well,
know that,
I got 3 acquisitions on me for defensive fire. I might as well shoot.
yes.
I mean, I
And I'm
can't
going to take
move.
this.
Yeah, I might as well
This
intensive
acquisition
fire.
comes off because, yeah, that acquisition comes off because he was shocked.
Right, and there's an
So,
acquisition on there
correct.
for the German. I needed a 7 before. I need an 8 now. I think.
Well, you're going to add 2 for intensive
Oh,
fire
intensive fire.
and
Yeah, need a
and
6.
take away
Thank.
1 for the acquisition. So you're net adding 1. So if you needed an 8 before, you need a 6 because
Yep.
of button up and the intensive
Yep.
fire.
Nope.
And so you miss by 1. Right? Now this guy can either maneuver or shoot to kill his target.
Let's
I
see.
need a 10.
That's got the inferior turret again. I'm tempted to take
Yep.
a shot. I'm acquired. Now, if I maneuver,
You
I can,
maneuver, you're going to get shot
right?
probably once or twice. I think that one should get him, and that one may get him.
Yeah, these. If I move, these 2 are certainly going to take a shot. These 2 might. They're
Okay, they're going
required.
to be blocked.
Well,
Yeah, they're going
depends
to
on
be blocked.
where you moved, I guess.
Yeah,
Like I think when I played it, I brought this guy up to here somewhere. I think
yeah, and so
here.
this is where we get into the the if wishes were nuts, right, or whatever that that old thing, because
Yeah.
we could go back and forth and scheme it out. But the point that I would make is by giving them all these shots, you made it possible to kill 2 tanks. Now
Mhm,
this one right here was a fairly lucky shot.
mhm.
right? And realistically, this guy right here could or couldn't be back, right? It just depends on how it goes.
Right.
And so now these guys are kind of isolated, and how do they come out? And I can tell you that whenever they come out, everything back here that can is going to take a motion die roll, and you're going to get one shot. It's going to be +4 for bounding fire because that's just the minimum you can do, right? In ASL, it's +2 case B, which means you entered a new hex, and it's +2 case B and C, I think, which is after you moved. I know it's a +4 die roll modifier. So you're going to hit these guys on with a +6 modifier, right? Because I'm going to be in motion, you're going to be a moving vehicle, and you're going to be having moved into a new hex. So you're only going to hit me.
Might be buttoned up by that time. If I'm whipping around those
Yeah.
woods, I
So
might button
assume
up.
assume you made your startup roll and you came over to here, right? With both of them. And everything here just said, oh, we're all going to take motion. And when they take motion, remember, they can also freely change covered arc directions, right? So, like, this guy would probably change and go this way because he wants to try to get into J1, which is maybe out of this guy's LOS.
Right.
This guy is definitely going to change this way because he can change his covered arc. And by doing so, whoops, I didn't mean that one. Control X. Now he's definitely going to be able to get out of his LOS. This guy would change. Right, and he's probably going to be out of LOS. These two guys less so likely. So what they may do is they just face this way and face this way, because by sitting here, they're out of this guy's LOS. Out of this guy's LOS, so he has to change his covered arc. Same for this guy when he rats this way.
Yep.
And if they get one more hex, now everything has to change his covered arc.
Right.
So that's the best they can do. And I'm moving your acquisition on them. They hit me on a 9, and if he hit me on my front armor, it's a 20 to 11, so it's a 9 and a 9. So it's not very likely that I'm going to live outside of that. It's about a 70% chance to kill me, but that's the best chance I've got. Right, and I might move these two guys first, just to give this guy something to think about. Now, when these guys move, if I get if I lose rate, I'm going to definitely take the shots at these guys, just because you gotta.
Right.
I think you gotta, because you're so far down. You're down 2 tanks, and you want to kill. I guess if I kill 2, maybe I don't intensive fire because now I'm back in the lead. You have to think about how you're going to deal with that. This tank is probably going to die sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Especially given it, this guy right here is going to get caught up with eventually. So maybe you take it, maybe you don't. But this is definitely a target-rich environment for those two guys. So that's just what you have to. That's what you're kind of thinking about. How do you deal with it? And it kind of really sucks, and it's scary because these guys have a 12 startup. You roll 12 on a startup die roll, and they're just done, right?
Yeah.
And then as the Russian, I'd never challenge them. I just stayed back here, right? There's no sense in going. I'm 1.
No.
You can't do anything about it.
Yep.
You're going to have to try to come get me with all the tanks, and I will wipe these guys out.
So real quick, let's go back to these guys with their motion status attempt and changing.
Try to put everybody back where they are.
For the new players or players learning armor rules and that kind of thing. Why? I mean, I know why, but maybe you can explain why if they made their motion status attempt, why would you change their covered arcs in that direction?
So again, it's one of the articles you'll eventually post. I call it a quote unquote motion escape. And so I try to park my tanks in such a way that when I take motion attempt, I can turn in a direction that allows me to get out of the LOS of the enemy unit. And so, like, when these guys are here, if they take a motion attempt and they're say I can't remember if they were facing, right? Like, yeah, I think they were all facing this way when I put them down, right?
Yeah, something like that.
So by taking the motion attempt, if I take the motion attempt and I succeed, as part of a motion, you can freely change covered arc.
Correct.
And so I would say, oh, this guy's going to change. I think without looking at it, there's no LOS between this hex and this hex, and I want my first movement point to be out of line of sight.
Right. Okay.
So,
That's the key takeaway. You don't have to. You're not spending
correct,
one in their line of sight. You're spending one out of their line of sight. So you're protecting
correct.
yourself by spinning that way and scooting away out of their line of
And
sight.
so this is one of the things about big ASL, right? So like this guy right here, right? So say he's here, right? So there in S4, he has LOS. Well, we'll just assume he has LOS to that hex. For the purpose of discussion,
Okay.
he has LOS to that
Okay.
hex,
Let's assume
right?
it.
So then this guy's motion attempt would actually face him this way.
Yeah. Let's move that.
Because the way ASL works is I can go into this bypass section on the top, and this building or this woods blocks his LOS. And so I'm free.
Right.
And the in ASL you measure to the vertex when they do these bypassing. And so I don't mean to get
To
too
the
crazy
you measure to
to the
the
uninitiated SK guy.
you measure to the covered. It's called the covered arc focal point, which is at the front, which
Correct.
so it would be right there,
Yes, you would
which would be
measure to this
blocked. Yep.
vertex, which would be blocked from here, and so he'd be free, right? And then he'd come here, and he would just go right down this line where it's all going to be
Yeah.
blocked and work his way this way,
It would be
right,
measured
to
like
get free.
this, and it would be blocked.
Yeah, yeah, and that allows him to get away down that way.
Yep.
And so that's one of the biggest things you can take away from a defensive perspective in ASL is where do I park? Like this guy from an ASL perspective, he's actually parked pretty good insofar as that if he takes a motion, he could go into bypass here and probably get out of the way of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or he could take a motion. If you were parked here, he could take a motion and go up on the top of this hill for his first movement points, which is probably out of the LOS of everything down here.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you park yourself so that if you're accosted by tanks, how do you get out of it?
Yeah.
That's one of the things you're going to think about when you park.
That's
If
a
you're not invulnerable.
that's a whole separate subject. Very good
Yeah,
subject, and
yeah,
some of that stuff I've never even considered. So
yeah. And I'd be happy to come back and talk about it at some point in time because, like I said, there is a whole article that I wrote on that motion escape, and I've also done a whole the math on when do you take motion, when do you not take motion.
and mo-
Generally speaking, you almost always try a motion die roll
motion escape
unless you can kill
motion escape is different than purely a motion status attempt. It's setting yourself up. I'm just guessing here from your article.
Yes,
I haven't read
yes,
it yet, but
yes.
you take it's the result of a motion status attempt such that you're setting yourself up for minimizing any potential damage.
Correct. What you're trying to do is get out of LOS.
Yeah.
And if you can't get out of LOS, you're trying to minimize how much how many opportunities he has to shoot at you.
Because I think
Even if I can't get out of LOS of both of these tanks, maybe I can get out of LOS out of one of them. So he's only got one chance to roll a 9 instead of two chances to roll a 9.
I think a lot of players when they look at motion status attempt, their first thought is, "Oh, I'm going to spin my front armor to face whatever is threatening me," but that may not always be the case.
Correct. Actually, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna close this game right here, right? Close game. No, and I'm gonna reopen it. And I'm gonna ask you to resync on me.
Okay.
I'm gonna reset it. This was called turn 2. Because so much has changed, I want to make sure we can both see it. You can go ahead and sync on me again.
Oh, jeez. Okay, got it.
All right. And so then I want to talk about one other sort of subtle opportunity that I don't know how it plays out exactly in SK because I'm not sure the modifiers, but there's an opportunity here for this tank right here to get side shots at this tank, and maybe the player that you're playing against will miss it or not think about it or not consider it, right?
Mhm.
So for the purposes of this, we're going to assume that any shot this guy takes, I survive. There's no guarantee that I survive, but we're just going to assume that for the moment because it's easier, right, than going through the math. But this guy, when he starts for 1, he can change his cover arc like this. He can go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think the LOS is there from here, but if it's not there, it's definitely there,
Yeah,
right?
it's I did this exact same move. It's there from that hex you can see.
Yeah.
It's clear.
See, so 01 to there. So it's actually there. And that's a lot
It's clear
closer.
there.
And
Okay.
that's one of the ones, that's one that people might not hit, right? And so if you stop there, maybe he's just like, oh, I don't know. I think I'm going to turn my machine guns just to see what's happening, just to make sure. But if he lets you move there without shooting, what hurts you to why not just shoot him in motion?
Hmm.
Right? And so think about it. The range is less than 10, or sorry, less than 6. So if a basic to hit number of 10, I'm buttoned up, that adds 1, but you're large, that takes away 1, right? And then it's a +4 bounding shot, right? Case B, case C, each of them adding 2. So that's a 10 to hit with a 4 modifier and a doubling of the lower die. And if you right click and show info, in 45, you have an APCR 3, an AP 43, sorry, you have an APCR 5. So you have 2 chances really to roll less than or equal to 5 and doubling the lower die. And
So,
if you get the shot, it's a side shot and it's the best chance to kill those guys you're ever going to get.
so question:
Yes.
why not just spend a stop, eh, movement point,
So
and fire?
it depends.
There's no gun duels in starter kit.
Correct. So it all depends, right? If you have a gyro, then you never stop. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's no gyros in these here, so you don't do it. The reason you don't stop is because if I stop, then you're gonna instantly, you my opposing player, are gonna think, oh wait, maybe that LOS is there, right? You're gonna be like, ooh, I'm not so certain. And actually, what you do, does starter kit have the concept of moving into a hex for more movement points than you actually pay for it?
Yeah. Yep. You can. Yeah.
So 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 when you move into that hex, you move for 4. You move in for 4,
Mhm.
right? So if I stop, I'm 2 moving, and he would have to turn his cover arc, so it'd be a +4. He'd need a 6 to hit me. Now that's still not a bad chance. If he hits me, he's probably going to kill me, and so you have a chance. But if I spend 4 to go in there and he doesn't move at all, and he doesn't shoot, and I shoot back, then I get a chance to catch him by surprise, right? Double the lower die. It's a 6 to hit, doubling the lower die. That one would miss, but that was my APCR shot. That one would miss because of the 10. But if that had been like a 2-1 or a 2-2,
Mhm.
it's a hit, right? And so the odds of hitting are not insignificant. It would hit on a, would have to roll less than 6, right? It would hit on a 1-1, a 1-2, a 1-3, a 1-4, a 2-1, a 2-2, a 3-1. Would hit those right there. So it's a 6 out of 36. So it's a 16% chance.
Now, what would you do if the tiger did a motion status attempt? I mean,
Oh, then he'd be dead.
that would
Then he would be dead.
that would flush him out at that point because he'd be in
Well,
motion.
I mean,
He'd either
yeah.
have to
And so look over
stop
it.
or leave the next turn, right?
Well, and by spending a stop, I'm going to be there. So you look here, I got
Right.
16 movement points. Start for 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, stop 16. This guy's got 17, stop 17. This guy's got 16, stop 16. This guy's got, if he made a motion status attempt, this guy would try to get, you know, even into this hex if he can get into the hex. I don't know what the movement points are, but now I've got so many tanks that are in a position to be on the sides and rear of it. I would swarm it. The worst thing you can do as an invulnerable tank is take a motion status attempt and succeed if you're unsupported or you don't have enough there to do it. All of these tanks here with 17 movement points could all be like right in here. Right
Hmm.
now, I'm not going to count the hills and whatnot, but they could be all over these tanks. These guys could never be in motion at the end of a turn. They're just dead meat if they are.
Okay.
That's when I said earlier, you're looking for opportunities. Whenever your opponent leaves a tank parked in or stops a tank and it's in motion, the first question you should be asking yourself is, how do I kill that in my turn? Because they're almost always a weakness left in motion. If you watch me play, or if we ever have the chance to play, you'll see I almost never leave a vehicle in motion unless I just am trying to hide it out of the way
Right.
because they're too vulnerable in motion. The game is too punishing on a tank that's in motion. If it's got a gyro, you can do it because it's a +3 shot. But if you think about it, if this tank is in motion and he's firing in defensive fire phase, he has to pay the same case B, which is as if he entered a new hex. He has to play the same case C, which is as if he was moving. He has to double his lower die roll just like everybody else does. And so his chances of hitting become so minuscule. All of my tanks moved in that turn, so there's another +2. So he's looking at a minimum of a +7 shot, and he can never qualify for point blank.
Mhm.
Right? And so it just it's the worst thing you can do is be in motion and not have a plan. Now, if he's in motion and he can do that motion escape where there's a building here and a building here and he drives in again full scale as in between bypass and he escapes out this way, okay, that makes sense. But where he's at here where there's nowhere to run and hide, that would be death. That would be death.
Now, does
Making a
that
motion.
does that theory apply to any AFV or
Yes.
just behemoths like this, like a tiger? Any
Any
AFV?
AFV.
Okay.
Any AFV that's like this guy makes a motion status attempt and he's not supported, or he's only supported by this one barrel, then you run everything you can over there.
Mhm.
Right? You have to always be constantly evaluating as you're playing because if this guy shoots, kills a tank, okay, that sucks, but I can go on. If he kills the tanks and gets ready to fire, now what do I got to do? Because I'm going to lose the 2 tanks to go kill 1, right? If he intensifier, is the intensifier worth the risk? Because it's going to be +2 for my moving tank, +2 because of his. So he's going to hit me on a 6-ish, but he breaks his gun on a 10. Is it worth it to run through there or not for this second tank? I don't know. It depends on how far ahead or how far behind I am. If I find that if I'm ahead in a game, I tend to slow down my aggression because I don't need to worry about because I'm winning, right? I no longer have to be aggressive once I'm winning.
Mhm.
And if I'm behind in a game, I need to be more aggressive. And the further I am behind or the shorter my time is to finish, the more recklessly aggressive I have to be.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So that's like the last turn. Everybody runs through the open ground trying to catch one building.
Yep.
Right. That's reckless aggression because you just have no other options. If it's 2 turns again, then maybe I run one guy across the open ground and draw fire and see if I can, limit your opportunities to do it, or I see if I can break your fire lane or whatever. But aggression has to be matched to the situation. If you're ahead, there's no sense in being aggressive. Like I said before, right? Once I killed these tanks in our earlier discussion, there's no need for me to come after you. I'm winning at this point. You have to come to me now. And so now the question is how do I set up in such a way that I can kill these guys in a crossfire? That's what you're thinking about.
Yep. And
Well,
go ahead.
we talked earlier about dance of death. I'll just show that right quickly here like this. So the way the dance of death works, any vehicle that has or any weapon that has a fixed covered arc. So in this case, the bow machine gun or the coaxial machine gun or the main armament allows you to take a change in covered arc as part of that shot. So if you're surrounded by T-34s coming from all these directions, right, like this, and what you want to do is you want to keep your main covered, your primary armor at this guy. So this guy comes from this direction, stops for the lack of it. It's not the way I would do it, but just for the purpose of discussion, he stops. You fire your main gun, and let's just say you wreck it, but you didn't get my covered arc. You didn't get rate of fire. So then the next guy comes from this direction. He stops. You say, "Oh, I'm going to fire my bow machine gun, and as part of it, I'm going to flick like this." So he shoots, can't shoot it. That's fine. You're good. And this third guy comes in. He's going to throw the coup de grace on you, and he gets to right here, and he's going to do it. And you say, "Oh, I got a coaxial machine gun I still haven't fired." So then you use that, fire the machine gun. Sure, you can't hurt anything, but now you're pointing your main gun at him. And then this guy comes in for a fourth go, and he's like, this is it. I've got him now. Finally, he's all done. And you're like, no, I got one more shot because I can intensify
Yeah.
my main gun, right? And then this guy wrecks. So that's what when you hear people talk about the dance of death, that's what's going on.
Mhm.
People with a vehicle is just dancing all over the place trying to do it, and then in his prep fire, he shoots the main gun and he kills this one, right?
Does
So we'll wreck this.
One of
and
your
then
old
he
articles
shoots.
cover this?
Yes, and then
Okay.
he uses his machine guns to spin around like this, and now this guy's got no chance, right? He doesn't even need to he doesn't even need to intensify. He just sits there and says, "Hi, here's my
Just
machine
waits.
gun." And this guy goes starts for one, and then he gets blown up,
Boom.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's what you're doing the dance of death. Does SK have the ability, the concept of entering an enemy's hex?
Yes. I
So the
so
way
like AFVs entering another hex. Is that what you mean?
correct,
Like driving through?
yes.
I think so.
So the way you solve some of this problem as the non-dancing player, if he allows you to do it, makes doesn't make the mistake, right? He makes a mistake. I'm trying to get everything back. Come on, unwreck that last vehicle. Is you just go into his hex and stay in motion. Now you have to do it legally, and I'm not sure what the rules are on your side, legal or
Yeah,
whatnot,
I'm trying to remember.
right?
AFVs can drive through. Infantry can't run through a
Right.
hex, obviously, but AFVs, I think they can drive through infantry hex. There's no overruns, but you can drive through, I think. And you can
Yeah.
drive
So
through an
in
AFV hex, but I'm not sure if you can stop in the hex.
Yeah, so that's
I,
that's what I don't know. And I know in ASL, what you do is you have to be able to kill it theoretically at the moment you enter the hex with a five. So this guy would be hard pressed because he doesn't have a big enough gun to ever kill this guy. But assuming he did, by remaining in motion in this hex, you have what in ASL you call target selection limits,
mhm.
and now he can never shoot again. So then all these guys just drive up like this into the back, and there's nothing this guy can do about it. They just end up parked like this, and there's nothing the tiger can do about it. He can never change cover to arc. He can never play any dancing. He can never do anything. He can't even make a motion attempt once this guy's in his hex like that because he can only take a motion step in lieu of firing. I think.
So
And so you
that's
get you get yeah, and you get into a position where you just destroy it that way.
that's
And that's why we
Sleeves
talk about
sleeves
tanks
freeze
have to
without
be.
bypass, I guess.
Uh, and that's why we talk about tanks always need to be in a position where they're supported by other tanks, because if it's like this, then this guy's shooting this guy in the rear, this guy's shooting this guy in the rear, this
Hmm.
guy's shooting this guy in the rear,
Yep.
this guy's shooting this, right? And so it doesn't much matter what's happening here. You have other stuff. So um, tanks always operate in units and pairs. One of the big myths about, and I don't know how much of a myth it is, but you hear the 5-on-1. It took
Yeah.
5 Shermans to take out one Panther, right?
Yep.
Well, that's because the smallest unit that Americans deployed armor during World War II was in half platoons of 5 tanks. They didn't send them out in ones. So if they heard a rumor that there was a Panther sitting at the road section, they would send a platoon off to deal with it. That's 5 tanks. It's not that it took 5 to do it.
Yeah.
And in fact, you'll find that a Sherman against a Panther in most circumstances with its fast gun will kill the Panther just on gun duels, which also is a topic for a different a different kind of ASL.
Yeah.
But the,
That,
the
that
the Shermans will have a little bit more of an advantage.
I've run into the whole gun duel issue in starter kit multiple times, and there's nothing that's not covered in the rules at all, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it
I,
makes common sense that whoever has the lowest diral modifier is gets to fire first, but I think most of the time we would just roll because it's,
yeah.
one guy just
So
declares a fire and the other guy says, "No, I'm firing." So there's no rules
so
covering
the
that at all.
Yeah, so the first article I ever wrote was covering gun duels because it was one that I'd covered. It's like the question was asked so many times and so many times, and it's like, okay, well, we're just gonna write this down once, and then whenever anybody asks again, I'm just gonna give them this because it covers the whole thing.
Hmm.
And I do believe you've actually reposted
Yeah,
that one.
that's up there.
And then the second article that I ever wrote was on what is a moving target, what is motion,
Yeah,
how do those all come into play? Because to understand AFV combat, you have to understand the moving, the motion almost before you understand the numbers.
yeah, you
Because
have
without
to understand the
without
terminology, and I think a lot, even
yeah,
full ASL players get hung up on stopped, non-stopped motion, and what's considered a moving target. That confuses a lot of
yes,
players.
yes. And so that's why I'd answer those two questions so many times that I wrote an article covering it. And then uh, my friend Bill Stoppel said, "Well, what about this?" And I wrote an article covering that. And then somebody said, "What about this?" And I wrote an article covering that. And then, one thing led to another. And over the course of 18 months, I think I wrote something like 130 articles
Wow.
covering different bits and pieces of ASL,
Yep.
all of which I obviously have given to you. So whenever you get your, you know, bits to put them around, that's at your pace and your leisure. And I look forward to seeing those.
Yep.
Um,
Every Friday, I'm going to try to get one up.
And then for people who are listening and watching, I try to respond on articles. I look for questions and I try to respond if people ask questions. So I'm there trying to look and answer questions. If there's anything somebody wants to see written, I don't know, you don't have a suggestion box, but there's a way that they can reach out to me or message me on the forums. I guess I eyeball your forums if there's a topic people want to see covered.
Yeah, the forums are
Just keep,
fairly inactive. I have a contact form, and I people contact me there occasionally, or they can
yeah,
reply to one of your old
yeah,
articles, and
yeah.
because I
Oh,
think you
they
read
can
them.
contact.
Yeah,
Yeah, they can contact. Yeah, I read them. They can contact you, and you can reach out to me, or they can leave something on the bottom, and I'll try to do it. But just I would tell people to keep in mind that I'm primarily an ASL player, and so if it's an SK specific question, I can do the best I can to understand it.
sure.
But I do not understand SK nearly as well as I do ASL, which is kind of funny given that one's like 15 sheets of paper and the other one's like 475 sheets of paper.
Well, obviously the
I
the
just
overlap is huge. So like your motion article, it
yeah.
applies to everything in SK. People can still read it and learn from it. Now
To me, it's not.
OBA maybe not, but things like that they can learn.
Yeah. To me, it's not the overlap that's quote unquote maddening. It's what's missing.
Yeah,
And that's the hard part because I have assumptions of, oh yeah, you're just going to go through this hex and bypass, or you're going to
right.
have to worry about the sniper in this particular instance, or you're going to have to lay a fire lane here to control that side. That was the first game I ever played with in SK was I think the S1, the infantry retaking Verville or whatever it
Verville,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, and I laid out a fire lane, and my friend who was there with me he was like,
Oh,
no, there's no
hold
fire
on,
lanes in Star
hold
Kit.
on a minute.
I'm like, what? I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, there's no fire lanes in Star Kit. I'm like, my whole defense is laid around the need for this
Yeah,
fire lane. It's not.
yeah,
He's like, nope, you don't get it. I'm like, well, so it's just rate of fire. He's like, yeah, it's just rate of fire.
yeah,
Oh, there's no rate on that machine gun. Everybody just ran right up at me.
yeah.
I'm like, wow, this is. And so, to me, the real catch on starter kit isn't what's missing. It isn't what's there. It's what's missing. If I could make the assumption that everything I know is there, then it would be one thing. It's the fact that you can't,
No, you can't.
right? It's just the small stuff that misses. And as we talked earlier, I think if you added bypass to it, it would be 90% of everything it has in it. And then if you added fire lanes to it, be a much more streamlined version of ASL.
Mhm.
That's exactly what it would be if it had those two things.
Yeah,
I
starter kit is just the core of
yeah,
ASL.
and I hate snipers, so you could take them away. I, I find that the problem I have with snipers is there's like almost zero skill involved in it. It's just
No,
all
it's just
blind, dumb luck.
it's just
And
random chaos.
yeah, and the number of times I've lost a game to some random chaos monkey just saying, "Oh no, you're doing so well. Let me just mess up everything."
Yeah, that's have you ever played Combat Commander?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, Combat Commander is the same way. It's really fun, but sometimes you don't have control of the chaos at all, and it's just stupid. The things that happen is just stupid, but it's still fun to play. I don't mind
Yeah.
snipers. It just introduces. It can be frustrating, but it introduces some just completely random crazy stuff that happens sometimes.
Well, what drives me nuts is when you're talking to somebody. So I was playing a game in we were in Sweden, and I was playing against Rob Maglika. I was over when I lived in Europe, and I've got Maglika beat. And Maglika says to me, he's like, "I don't know how I'm going to win this one. I don't know what we're going to do." And so I have I have this Panzer IV, this Jagdpanzer IV, sitting in the middle of the field, who's got his whole defense logged down. But there's a lot of brush and stuff coming through, and he's got a Badger coming at me, and I have to make sure that I can shoot this Badger. So I CE my tank, and I've got plenty of support around it, but I've got my one tank CE'd. Some random fire lane I lay down, roll a two, I cower. Two is his sniper, so I don't get the fire lane. Two is his sniper. Of course, he rolls a one in his sniper, and then he had to roll direction four. No other direction would have mattered. He had to
Of
roll direction
course.
four, and he had to roll direction 4 for more than 4. So 4 for 5 or 6. And when you work the math out, one of my friends says, "Well, if you couldn't afford to lose it, you got to button them up." I'm like, "Well, you can play the odds." He's like, "Yeah, you can play the odds, but..." And then I'm doing the math from like, "Well, there was a 1 in 5,000 chance or
Yeah.
something like that for this to happen." I said, "Am I going to really have to play against a 1 in 5,000 chance?
Right.
I don't have a right to look and say, wait a minute, the odds of this happening were fairly slim, and yet it did happen."
Yeah.
And then I went on, immediately after that, I rolled a 12 on my heavy machine gun fire lane, so I broke that. And I had another heavy machine gun fire lane, rolled a 12 and broke that. And then the whole doors were off, and suddenly everybody sweeps off the board. And Rob wins, and he looks at me and goes, "I don't know. I don't know how that happened." I was like, "I know how that happened. It happens to me all the time."
Yeah. That's how it goes sometimes.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, what I would say about this particular replay that you're playing through, I think there's some things that you've done in here that I think you did right, and there's some things in here that I would play a little bit differently.
Sure.
I think we've shown that the thing that the Germans can't do is, if the guys on the bottom side of the board are going to stop and play the challenge game like you did,
Hmm.
then the Germans probably should hide. If the Germans remain in motion, or the Russians remain in motion, sure, you come out and you try to kill them, right? Even to the point where I might have brought these tanks over here down into here to kill them, right? The 88 sitting right here could kill them pretty harsh,
Hmm.
right? With maybe one tank up here to kill them, because you got to get to the number. You got to get to 7, right? Isn't that the number I said? Yeah, no,
I think
8.
so.
You
8.
have,
Yeah.
you have to get to 8, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here that are waiting to die,
Yeah.
right? And there were 5 more up here, and they weren't going to be able to get off the board up here without you being able to chase them down and getting a shot in advancing fire and a shot in defensive fire. So these
Yeah.
5 tanks right here are I would have just pushed all my tanks over here, shot them, and then even if these guys run for the guys that were up here run for the board, they have 17 movement points, right? So they were along here. 1, 2, 3, start for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and they're not going to go over. And now you can just chase them up.
Now, I think the only difference between what you did, at least playing it from the beginning of turn 2, was you intensive fired nearly everything, and I didn't. I think that was the real difference between the result
Yeah.
I had and what you had. That made a huge difference.
Yep. And I think that there's a lot of people. So Gary May, who I've played like 3 times in my life, but I've talked to a lot of people who've played him. They say he is a madman. He will intensify just because he can, right? Even if he doesn't need to, because mathematically, it in the long run. Again, remember everything we've talked about is odds.
Yeah.
In the long run, the odds of you getting something positive out of an intensive fire shot are higher than your odds of getting something poor out of an intensive fire shot.
Right.
So in the long run, now you may lose this scenario when your gun busts, but in the long run, it's in your favor, right?
I'm really adverse to intensive fire. I've been burned a
Uh,
lot.
I've been burned my fair share too, but I
Yeah.
find that I do it a lot anyways. It's in this particular case because they could drive off and they're still of use.
Yep. That's the
I mean,
point. Yeah.
again, even if all I did was drive up and take a 6 add 2 against this exposed cruise, it's still a threat that he's got to think about, because God forbid if I stun him and he fails a morale check, because then I can swarm him with my tanks and kill him, and there's nothing he can do.
Hmm.
Right?
Yep.
That's the identify. Stunned vehicles, shocked vehicles, those things you should be asking yourself, how am I going to kill them right now? Vehicles in motion that are left in motion in his turn, you should be asking yourself, how am I killing that in my next turn? As soon as he stops and says remain in motion, you should be looking at everything you got on the board. How am I going to get to kill that vehicle? What am I going to do?
Hmm.
How am I going to get there? Because they're vulnerable, and
Yep.
and this whole game is about risk reward, and the risk of killing a tank that's in motion is so significantly smaller compared to its reward when you take into effect that there's a +4 bounding fire shot, doubling the lower dice, +2 because I'm in motion, right? So it's a 6 + 4 doubling the lower die, or sorry, it's a 10 + 6 doubling the lower die before anything else,
Yeah.
counting like buttoned up, small targets, etc. Um, the risk is so low compared to the reward of killing a tiger that you should be asking yourself, how do I kill it right away?
I think a lot of
What?
players, including myself, I I do some of the numerical analysis, not to the level that you do, and that seems to be programmed into your brain. I kind of live when I play. I kind of live in the moment, and I kind of play and I kind of run the rough odds in my head and just kind of see where it goes. But you seem to have it down to an art of analyzing, minimizing those risks and maximizing those opportunities.
Well, so I wouldn't say I have it down to an art. I've had it beaten into me by several players that are better than me on a regular basis. So the guy who lives closest to me in my ASL career was Gary Fortenberry, and he and I used to play quite regularly, particularly playtesting and stuff. And then I played a little bit with Guy Cheney, who's one of the best ASL players I've ever played.
Mhm.
And then I play a lot internationally, so I've played Toby Pilling, and I've played Michael Hastrup Leth, and I've played Bo Siemens, and I've played a couple of the Rob McGleeka, and just played good players all around the world.
Right.
And so I've had plenty of opportunities to have my teeth kicked in, and I've learned some pretty hard lessons. The math that I talk about, I don't do it at the table. I mean, I have the little chart that we showed earlier
Yeah.
that I use. That I don't even use that at the table. I just have it in my head. I know if I have a 7 to hit and a 7 to kill, that works out to about a 25%
Right.
chance of killing that tank. And I know that in my head. And so then I just adjust from there. So if it's a 8 to kill and a 6 to hit, it's still about the same 25%, right?
Hmm.
And so that in my head, I just sort of have those down. And I may take a moment to say, okay, what is my chances of killing this? I know what it is. Okay, I'll take a go. But what I find to be the biggest help is knowing how to create dice roll modifiers through for defender, right? Target shooter based die roll modifiers, right? ASL's got two kinds of die roll modifiers. They're shooter based,
Hmm.
meaning what is the guy who's shooting going to pay? So covered arc changes, um, hindrances, etc. They're in his race. And then there's target based, being in motion, limited LOS, small targets, whatever.
Hmm.
So the question I ask my head is how do I get the biggest possible die roll modifier I can when I try to attack this tank so that I'm in a favorable position. And then from full up ASL perspective, by creating those large die roll modifiers, I can get to a gun duel perspective position, which will automatically give me the first shot. But that just those don't exist in starter kit. So the way you have to think about a starter
No.
kit is how do I get die roll modifiers that are in my favor? How do I make that base 10 plus X, where X is as big as I can possibly make it? Because if I can do that and I can get his X bigger than my X, then my chances of hitting are better than his.
Right.
And then if my chance to kill is even, then my chance of winning that particular engagement are favorable compared to his.
Yep.
And that's all you can do. As the defender, it's great. You can just sit back, wait, take the first shot, get the first acquisition, follow all the principles that Bruce Buchan talked about in his article, which I still think is great. But as the attacker, if you followed Bruce's article, you would just lose because there's just you know his concept is predicated on being a defender, and there's
No.
nothing wrong with that. And it was seminal in thinking, and it took me, probably 2 years to really think about what was going on and coalesce it into my own sort of okay, well, this is how I would do it as an attacker. And there's 25 years of learning that went into thinking about how to pull that together. And a lot of it involved tanks that looked like this, right? Let's just turn this over to this side, and then let's pull out
Pull
one of
blades
these
on
things. Let's pull out one of these things, right?
there.
It involved a lot of that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Right? And so you just learn over time and you pay attention. I did write a whole article on what I called learning ASL and getting better at ASL. And to me, there were different ways to learn. There are different modes of learning. And to me, the thing that you had to really that helped me the most was playing broadly. But I also have a notebook that I use, and I don't know if I have one, but I have these notebooks that look like
Hmm.
this, right? And I keep them around. And every one of these notebooks have games that I've played in them, and things that I've learned or things that I noted. In my older notebook, I have 17 of them my older notebooks have much more detailed notes than my newer notebooks. And that's primarily because my older notebooks, there was more to learn.
Yeah.
And because there was more to learn, I tended to write more. And as I made mistakes and as I did it, I tried to highlight. And for me as a learner, I learned two ways. I learned by doing,
Hmm.
and I learned visually. And ASL for me triggers both of those, right? Because of the visual aspect of it, and because I took notes and I talked about things that I learned, and I talked about why things worked the way they were. That helped. A lot of people are shocked to find out that I never read the rule book until I played about 100 games of ASL. Now
Wow.
I did read sections of ASL, right? I read books that are the rules that I needed to understand or the pieces I needed to understand, but I relied on my opponent to help me work my way through the rules where it counted. And I would make a real quick note, and if I agreed with you or disagreed with you, we'd just play it whatever you said. But I'd make a note later to look it up. And then when I finally sat down to really read the rule book and understand it, I've got 100 games, right? I can remember back to a situation where this happened or that happened, and I'm like, oh, that's what happened, or oh, that's why we made a mistake. Um, our local conscripts guys used to play a really weird motion rule where if your tank was a moving vehicular target that case J applied and you stopped, they believed that point blank didn't apply to you. You didn't gain point blank when shooting at the enemy because you were moving, but when they shot at you, they did get point blank.
Hmm.
And it took me a while to break my head out of that space. Um, it was a weird world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're
So
at
an hour and a half, I noticed.
hour and a half. Yes, I just looked at just looked at OBS. We're at an hour and a half. So yeah, we should probably wrap this up. So if you were to summarize your takeaway from Clash at Borisovka, how you kind of replayed the beginning of turn two, what would it be? A quick little takeaway.
As you played it, I don't think I would have changed much other than the intensive firing. I think uh, as the game lied, I think that's the best you could have hoped for. I don't think I would have played it that way to begin with. Had the Russians come out the way you did, my Germans never would have challenged your Russians, unless it would have been the 88s over on that side just to pick them all off. Because at that range, you couldn't hurt me, I could hurt you. So maybe the 88s would just be shooting on those 5 tanks over there, while the Mark IVs would on the other side trying to stop the exit. Those guys all that way over there would have been hard pressed.
Hmm.
I think shouldn't. I mean, obviously, there's bad stuff that happens when you intensive fire, but
Yes,
it's not
you got
always it's
you
not
got
always the
lucky.
worst option. Yeah, it's not always the worst option,
Yeah.
right? In the long run, you win. I think if I were to play this myself as the Russians, I would have probably been more compact in the middle, hiding behind that woods mass, as we've discussed, because I don't want to give you. I don't want to expose myself, and I want to stay in motion as much as I can because I want to close the distance as quickly as
Yeah.
I can.
Hmm.
Um,
And I, and
but
I I
I,
made
I
I made point of that in I think maybe the part three where the weakness for the Russians is being at range. Their guns and ammo are just terrible at range.
right, and their APCR isn't good, right? I
No,
mean, if you think
no,
about the APCR bumps from a 13 to a 14,
yeah,
and then it falls off really fast. I think it starts to fall off at range 12,
yeah,
right? So it really isn't anything to write home about unless you do what I did, in which is get a 1-1, and that just as good with just as good with AP as is with
yeah,
APCR. Yes.
yeah.
Uh, um, I think generally speaking, as a teaching mechanism, I really like that scenario. And I will tell you that I spent the better part of 2 days thinking about, after I saw you first. The first episode I saw, I think was turn three or turn two. I can't remember. I think it was turn three, and then I went back and watched turn two because I was trying to understand how the vehicles got where they were,
Mhm.
and I went back and watched turn one to see what your thinking process was, and then I got the card to look at it because I had never seen the card, and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, okay. And then I said, okay, so if I were starting this from the beginning, how would I approach this? And like I said, to me, the thing that stood out was if I can kill one tank on the head, and that takes all the pressure off my back and puts it on yours. And that would be that as a Russian, that would be my goal to get up on the tank battle and then make you come to me if I could. As the Germans, my goal is to kill. I mean, I'm looking up again because I wrote it down. My goal is to kill 8 or more tanks.
Yeah.
And if I lose every tank doing that, I don't care. Doesn't matter. Nothing on the card says I have to have anything left alive. All it says is I have to kill more than you. And if I kill
Yeah.
eight, well, I have to kill at least as many as you do. And if I kill 8, that's the best you can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the way that I would approach that.
Okay. Um,
So
I'll be posting. Well, I'll be posting part 4 before this video probably goes up. I'm not sure when this will go up. Thanks, Jim, for your insight
oh, thank you.
on the AFVs and all the number stuff. That's great. And maybe we'll do a video of something else in the future. We'll just wing it, or your articles if we ever want to revisit any of your articles in video form. I'm
Yeah,
open to
and,
whatever you want to do. Yeah.
and I'm open to whatever you want to do. Or in particular, I really enjoy, if people have something that's scratching an itch or they really want to see or talk about. And I'm not opposed to doing, like, something along the line like Stu was doing with his Tactical Tuesdays, in a group setting. I don't know that I'd want to do Tactical Tuesdays per se, but
Yeah.
in a group setting where there's more action, I'm open to just about
Yeah.
anything. I'm a retired man of leisure, and as you can see here, I'm an
Yeah.
astrophotographer,
Yeah.
so that's one of my telescopes,
Yep.
and
And
that's a night ambition.
right. And if anyone has any request, if anyone's made it an hour and a half into this video and you have any questions for Jim or want him to cover something, just post it in the comments below or on the website.
Or
And
contact you.
yeah, we'll see, or Discord, whatever, and we'll see what we can work out. Okay.
Yep.
All
All right,
right.
man.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks much. I
Yep.
appreciate it.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Bye.
Get to the chopper!
If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you saw, thanks for watching, and let me know how I can do better. See you in the next video.